Alright, so after many hours, I finally managed to get into Microsoft Flight Simulator 24, and currently we are running at 4K on the Ultra preset, no DLSS, no frame generation, no nothing, and we are flying over New York, and 4K native or DLAA, we are getting 40-ish frames per second here. Now, I'm trying to get the network usage up on the screen as well, but I'm not able to do that, but I've got the Task Manager network usage here on my other monitor, and it's actually peaking at around 200 megabits per second. It's averaging at around 100 megabits per second. Now this is because of how the game works. Now we basically get a much smaller install size, but everything else is being streamed from the cloud. And sorry once again if my voice cuts out every now and again. The aircon is on again. It's very warm here, so it might just cut out my voice due to the noise reduction kicking in. But you can see we are fully GPU bound here. We are seeing our GPU busy average and frame time average there matching up pretty perfectly, and that just means we are fully GPU bound. Okay, we're going to crash, but you can see that there is quite a there is flickering underneath the plane due to shadows, and it's kind of disappointing seeing that we're not using any upscaling yet. It's just the DLAA, so I would have expected it to be a bit better, but oh well, maybe it gets better with future patches. Right, so that is a 4K native. It does support DLSS and frame generation, and now we're going to crash. All right, let's just look at the settings quickly. Let me get rid of this. So as you can see, 4K DLAA, and the global or the rendering quality is set to ultra. So let's just see. First, we'll just do some preset scaling, and we'll just do high end and then medium and see what kind of frame rates we do get. We can actually just look here. So not actually an increase even. We went from 39 to 44 frames per second, so sure, that's a 10% increase, but nothing to really be excited about. Although over here when we fly a little bit higher, we are seeing around 50-ish frames per second. I'm not sure if I reset the numbers. Now I have, and you can see that the game does have quite a lot of stuttering, and it's actually pretty bad flying into New York because it has to load everything from the cloud, and it just relates to quite a bit of stuttering. But it does seem to get a little bit better the more you fly over a specific area, because obviously then it has downloaded everything already. So 50-ish frames per second here. Let's just see if we can get a little bit of a better frame rate. Just going to the medium preset. I think it's medium. Right, so medium settings. Let's see if we can hit 60 frames per second. Though I doubt it. Let me just refresh the numbers. Actually, there we go. So medium is getting us 60 frames per second in this specific spot. We are going to accelerate this time before we attempt the turn, just to prevent us from crashing. I know my bank angle is very steep, but we have to make the turn as quickly as possible. All right, so we are getting, I mean, around 60-ish frames per second. Your 4K native, 40 on the 4080 Super. The game is quite heavy, as you can see, and luckily it does have DLSS and frame generation. So, and in a game like this, the added input latency is definitely not going to make a difference at all, unless you fly the Red Bull, what do they call it, those courses, and you need quick reactions. But I mean, I'm playing here with the controller, and the input latency is not going to be an issue at all. So 40-ish frames per, 60 frames per second here at 4K on the medium preset, and I think it looks perfectly fine. I think this is perfectly fine to play it like this. There's I don't think you're going to notice the biggest difference between ultra and medium, especially in cockpit view, but yeah, you are. So let's just go back to the Epic preset, and then we will do some DLSS scaling. If we then do DLSS quality, no frame generation, let's see. I'm not sure we'll be able to hit 60. Actually, I'm wrong. I mean, I'm almost always wrong. But, okay, so in-game, we are not getting 60 frames per second. These flickering shadows are quite distracting, though. I'm not sure if there's anything that can be done about that, but I don't know if this game does have ray tracing. I haven't seen ray tracing in the options. I know that I think the previous Flight Simulator had some ray tracing options, but I might be mistaken. Right, so 43 frames per second here. So I'm going to just leave everything open there because it's a little bit easier. So DLSS balanced, we aren't getting, well, we did not get a boost at all. So 50 frames per second, still very GPU limited here. You can see GPU usage sitting at 99%, 98%, and our GPU busy and frame time averages are basically matching up. So we are definitely GPU bound here. But we did not see a boost to our frame rate going to DLSS balanced. Let's see if how steep I can actually make this turn. Okay. I mean, there's no passengers in here, I hope. I'm a nervous flyer, so I really don't hope there's any passengers in here. Okay. Alright, so we managed to turn around pretty quickly. And 50-ish frames per second. So DLSS balanced did not get us any boost to our frame rate there. So DLSS performance, so this is 1080p internal render resolution. Let's see. And I mean, once again, the GPU power is reducing, so which means we might become a little bit more CPU bound, and the frame rate increased slightly, but not a lot. You can see our CPU power there sitting at 140 watts. This is a 14700 KF, so that is to be expected. It is quite heavy on the juice. The game looks plenty good, and I think with what they've done with how the assets load in, etc., sure, it is annoying initially, but I think it'll look good in pretty much all scenarios. So 60 frames per second, almost doable. Yeah, so let's just go back and enable DLSS frame generation. Yeah, so I'm going to go back to DLSS quality and then just enable frame generation. Let's just see. And as I said, frame generation is not going to make the biggest difference for you here in terms of input latency. I mean, plane controls are sluggish by nature, so especially the bigger planes. So 80-ish frames per second here. Our stuttering seems to have reduced quite a bit. Our lows are much better, and we still have our annoying flickering underneath the engine there. All right, or underneath the fuselage. So 100 frames per second at times if we look up in the sky. Now, this is perfectly fine. I'll be able to play like this. I know that a lot of people would be playing this with the VR headsets, and a lot of people would be aiming for, I think, around 90-ish frames per second. Now, I'm not sure how frame generation impacts virtual reality or VR. I haven't used frame generation with VR at all, so let me know down in the comments below if frame generation is actually good technology to use in a game like this with VR goggles. Alright, so 80 frames per second average there, and I think this is perfectly fine at 4K. It looks plenty good. It performs okay-ish. I mean, it's not going to be running at the highest frame rates considering what kind of game it is. The game is actually a 1-to-1 representation of Earth, so I don't think the frame rate here is something to be too concerned about. Alright, let's drop this down to 1440p and see what happens. Alright, so here we are back on the Ultra preset and the DLAA, no frame generation at 1440p, and I'm actually thinking we won't be able to hit 60 frames per second. Okay. That's actually... Okay, the game is very, very heavy. And as we saw, the presets don't really make that big a difference. So you're going to have to use upscaling, unfortunately, or frame generation even. But our GPU power is, I don't know, something feels very wrong here. It feels very sluggish and jittery. The frame time graph is very erratic now as well. The stuttering is pretty bad. Like the frame times are all over the place, just from a visual perspective as well. It does not feel good at all. All right, so 50-ish frames per second here. I don't know if we are CPU bound. Let's see if we enable DLSS quality here. I know it's a little bit in the way, the overlay, but let's just go with DLSS quality, and let's see if we actually do get a boost to our frame rate. If we do, that means we're not CPU bound, and we did. Not that much, but something that'll maybe keep us above 60 frames per second at alt. Nope. Okay, but that was a stutter. The game is very stuttery, and if you have a look at the Steam reviews, you'll see that the game has extremely negative reviews, but that's because nobody could actually get in. Now that I've flown over New York for quite a bit, I see that the maximum usage on my internet link here is around 40 megabits per second. So as I said, the moment everything has downloaded and loaded in, the stuttering does decrease and the network usage also goes down quite a bit, and we might fall out of the area. Okay. All right, so not able to hit 60 frames per second at 1440p with the DLSS set to quality. That's kind of rough. But once again, even 30 frames per second in a flight simulator is fine for many people. I personally would prefer a little bit of a higher frame rate, but it is what it is. So let's just go back and see. Actually, I wanted to show you we were CPU bound at this point. Our GPU usage was sitting at around 90-ish%. So going to DLSS balanced is not going to get us anything here. Just look at our GPU usage there. It's sitting at 80%, 79%. So we are not going to hit 60 frames per second here without a frame generation. Unfortunately, you can see CPU usage, well, GPU power is sitting at 200 watt and, well, 190 watt, and usage is very low. So we're definitely not GPU bound here, and graphical settings aren't really going to make a difference here. All right, so seeing that we are CPU bound at this point, additional DLSS presets aren't going to make a difference here for us. Let's just open up the frame rate counter there. So you can see we are still sitting between 60 and 70 frames per second. There's quite a few stutters here, but I do think it's because these communications pop up and then it does stutter as well. So 60-ish frames per second, we are just basically reducing our GPU usage at this point. All right, so what I did find though was that when we are CPU bound, the graphical presets, not DLSS presets, but the graphical presets actually make a bit of a difference. So let's just have a look here. I think a lot of these actually do pertain to CPU performance as well. Which ones that'll need to, oh, we do have ray trace shadows. Okay, so I think this might be why we are seeing terrible shadows. We'll test that out. But there's a lot of settings here, as you can see. And I think a lot of these settings do affect CPU usage as well. Maybe traffic, airport quality, and air traffic. So let's just leave everything as is and DLAA quickly. And let's try the high-end preset. Remember, we were sitting at around, what was it, around 50-ish frames per second on the Epic preset or the Ultra preset, whatever it's called. And now we are getting 70-ish frames per second. You see the lows take a nosedive even when I restart the benchmark counter. So it is what it is. 70-ish frames per second. Yeah, shadows look terrible. Actually, I'm going to test this now. I'm going to see whether ray trace shadows are the culprit here. So if we go down here, right, ray traced shadows disabled. Let's see. Okay. Is it worse? I think it's worse. I don't know. that is going to be very distracting for people flying flying in a third-person view or chase camera. Anyway, so we did not really see that big a difference or increase to our frame rate here when we disabled the ray traced shadows. Maybe when we are a little bit closer to the ground we'll see a difference, but currently we are not, and we are overspeeding. The graphical glitches here are just kind of annoying. I'm using the latest Nvidia driver, so it's definitely not driver related, but it is annoying. Maybe we should just fly straight and never bank. All right, so 70-ish, 69, 79, 80 frames per second. Yeah, let's just quickly try the medium preset quickly, and then I mean we do have it set to custom because we do have ray tracing disabled. So let's just try the medium preset quickly. Medium preset actually does lower quite a lot of these settings. All right, so if we go back into our game here, so pretty much, I don't know, maybe we gain 10 frames per second. I'm also, I'm flying around all over the place. It's not everywhere in the same location. So, I mean, the frame rate will differ wherever, depending on where you are. But 80-ish frames per second here, fully CPU bound. Actually, our GPU is once again sitting at 86% utilization. So definitely CPU bound, and I think in this case frames generation is basically the only one or the only setting that'll make a bit of a difference here. We can go to low obviously, but I don't think it's going to be worth it. All right, so 90 frames per second, 88 frames per second on average there. Let's go ahead and go back to DLSS quality, I think, and then just enable frame generation. All right, so DLSS quality and frame generation enabled, and okay, that's wow. Okay, sorry, this is on the medium preset. That's why my mistake. So let's go ahead and just go back to the epic preset, ultra preset. Okay, ultra preset, DLSS quality, frame generation enabled, and let's hope we get 180 frames per second again. We do not. So that just shows you the difference the presets actually make here, which is good, which means it scales very very well with, I mean, all the hardware. You should be able to get playable frame rates just by adjusting the presets there. Obviously the best would be to use custom settings, cater everything specifically to your needs, and get your frame rate targets. But 1440p DLSS quality, frame generation on the epic preset, I think it's, I mean, for a flight simulator game, I think it's fine. That's not fine. I keep on coming back to that, but that is really annoying. So 117 frames per second, the lows are pretty bad here. But if you remember Flight Simulator 2020, it was pretty bad as well when it comes to stuttering. So nothing surprising or nothing new here actually. Okay, so 117 frames per second. I actually just want to see if we just go to the high preset. We saw the medium preset get us around 180 frames per second, right? So let's go high end and see. All right, this is actually, I think this will be fine. 160 frames per second. More than what many people would require in a flight simulator game, right? I think it's perfectly fine, this 140-ish frames per second. Sure, we did have to enable DLSS frame generation, yeah, but it is because the game, I mean, on the ultra preset, it is very CPU heavy, and then it is also very GPU heavy. So DLSS frame generation actually is a perfect candidate for a game like this. As I said, we don't have to worry about frame generations, added input latency being a problem here, and DLSS frame generation is pretty good at overcoming a CPU bottleneck, or assisting whenever you do have a CPU bottleneck, as is the case in this whenever we drop the graphical presets. All right, so I think that's going to be it. I know my video is a little bit late. I was hoping to get a video last night already, but unfortunately I was not able to get into the game, as many others weren't either. But here we are. And a little bit later tonight, I'll be doing a Stalker 2 video as well. So if you want to see that, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. And as always, we hope to see you guys in the next one.